She said nothing for a moment, then shouted after me, "Fine, that's where my wand is anyway." She paused, then tried again. "Malfoy, it doesn't make sense to go where you're going." "Listen, Granger," I stated, turning around to face her. "You can do whatever you want, but nothing is going to entice me to go back that way through all that." I pointed. I shooed her with my hand. "Ta-ta." She glared at me a moment, just standing waist-deep and waving barley. Then she spun around and stared back toward the woods, her long curls bouncing and swinging behind her. I rolled my eyes, grateful to finally be rid of her. I kept stomping toward the lonely tree, the barley whispering and rustling all around me. My frown deepened as I studied the bright landscape and the softly waving, drooping branches of the willow. Had I been here before, or had I just imagined a place like this? Finally, I drew closer to the willow, which turned out to be larger than I had ever seen. It looked about twice the height of the whomping willow out on the school grounds, but this one showed no indication that it was going to swat at me. Its green, winsome branches draped down to the ground, forming a curtain all around its trunk. Memory stirred again. I hesitated, then reached out to push some of them aside and step into the quiet and shade. A scream tore the air. I twirled around, my heartbeat leaping. It came again, rending the silence, bouncing off the gray, leafless trees of the black forest. A horrified, primal, desperate shriek like someone was being killed. Granger. I gripped the low-hanging branches and stared at the ring on my right hand. The sun glistened off the silver of the crest. I closed my eyes, gritted my teeth, and squeezed the branches hard. She was screaming again. "Hermione. This is ridiculous, absolutely absurd," I muttered, slapping a branch out of my face as I stormed into the shadows of the wood. "The door is this way. Why wouldn't he—" Something moved in the deep shadows in front of me. I slowed to a halt. I listened. A low slither like a long, smooth, heavy body moving through the underbrush filled the silence of the forest. Chills raced over my skin, and then I caught sight of a form. It was lengthy, perhaps 10 meters, and moved like a steady black river toward me. I swallowed. "Hello?" I tried. My parents would think I was barking mad for addressing things that crawled on the ground, but in my experience, they answered half the time. "Hello? Is someone there?" Hiss! "Oh no," I breathed, taking a step back. I trod on something squishy. I yelped and jumped forward, spinning around, to see that all of the ground around me was covered in black adders. They swarmed in and out, over and between each other, piles of them, slithering and sliding and hissing. I could not move, I could not step anywhere, for they surrounded my feet like I was standing in a simmering puddle of tar. Dozens of them swept slowly by and turned their heads, staring up at me with black, glittering eyes. I went ramrod straight, clamped my arms to my sides, and forced myself to look up. My mouth tightened as my arms and hands and knees began to shake. My stomach turned and my blood went cold. I had not been afraid of snakes when I was little. The basilisk had changed that. "This can't be real," I said through my teeth. "It can't be." Draco's goblins weren't real. They were from a book. This isn't real. This isn't real. This isn't— Ay! My words turned into a whimper as a snake, a very large one, began to wrap its cold, smooth body around and up my ankle, then my calf. I wanted to kick it off and run howling, but I bit my tongue and forced myself to stay still. If I moved, it would bite me. "Oh, get off, get off, get off," I begged, my throat convulsing. "Please get off, please." Its thick coils tightened around my leg. I screeched and smacked it. It sank its teeth into my skin, right on the back of my knee. I let out a scream like I never have. Burning, searing, raging pain flared through my whole leg. I reached down and ripped the snake off me. Blood got all over my hands. The snakes, simmering, rose to a boil, and their hiss became a roar like angry wasps. I tried to jump over them, to run back toward the barley field, but they leapt up my legs, tying like ropes, coiling around my ankles. I tumbled to my knees. My hands landed on another snake. He lashed out and bit my wrist. I screamed out again, my throat tearing, and tried to knock him off. He clamped down and pumped me full of venom. Then another one bit my elbow, another my thigh. Tears streamed down my face, and I thrashed on the ground, kicking and slapping with all my strength. The swarm of snakes began to pull me under. "Help!" I wailed. "Oh, help me, please!" My whole body was on fire. Hundreds of snakes bit me at once, then came again and bit again. I could feel my blood filling with venom. I was going to die. "Get up, Granger, get up!" The words came to me through a haze, and though I tried to obey, my muscles wouldn't move. Then a strong hand gripped my upper arm and jerked me upward. Snakes tumbled off me. I staggered forward. Some caught me with his arm around my waist. Then sharp strikes, each resounding with a crisp crack, shook me. But I was not being hit. The arm that held me moved with each crack as if the other arm was busy making the sound. "Blast these snakes," the same voice barked in time with each crack. "And blast you for losing my wand." The arm pulled back out of the swarm of snakes, then two hands shoved me back against the unyielding bark of a tree. "Of all the brilliant, just brilliant," the voice muttered, and I felt something tear away from my cheek. I yelped. "You want me to keep letting it bite you?" he snapped. I squeezed my eyes open to see Draco Malfoy standing right in front of me. He threw a snake down, a snake that had apparently been locked onto my face. And then he swiftly reached up and ripped one off my head, whipped one of them from around my neck, then bent down and wrenched that first long one off my leg. Apparently, I had not gotten it off the first time. "Get back!" he roared at the creatures, taking up a long stick and advancing at the swarm. They hissed at him, and that long one opened its mouth and let out a scathing snarl. Draco swung and cracked it on the skull. It squirmed for a moment, then lay still. The snakes, like a receding tide, retreated into the blackness. Draco, out of breath, watched them go. The poison lifted from my arms and legs. I reached up to my face to feel my wound, but there was nothing there. My skin was smooth. I stared at my hands, earlier covered in blood. From what I could see, they were clean. Draco tossed the stick down, then turned to face me. "You happy now?" he bit out. "Satisfied that you are so smart? What did I tell you?" "That nothing would entice you to go back this way," I whispered, trying to stop my shivering. He glowered at me. I swiped at my eyes, but tears still came away on my fingers. "I don't understand this." I shook my head. "I never thought the Room of Requirement could be evil." "Are you really this ignorant?" Draco threw his arms in the air, then slapped his thighs. Top of the bright eyes pinning me where I stood. "Magic is not good or evil. It's a tool," he said. "If I waved my wand," he pantomimed into the air. "If I had a wand, that is," his lip curled, "and said Accio Hemlock and murdered you with it," he pointed at me. "Does that make the Accio spell evil?" I stared at him, then shook my head. He shook his head too. "It's not the magic, it's what you do with it." "So," I murmured, wrapping my arms around myself, "what did we do with it?" He glanced at me, then around us at the wood. For a long moment he said nothing. Then he took a deep breath. "I don't know." My eyebrows went up. "You were talking like you did." "I don't, all right?" He shot back, glaring at me. "This has never happened to me before." "Wait, you come here often?" I stepped toward him. "As much as anyone else," he returned, but he was lying. He wouldn't look at me. "Malfoy." "Shh." I stopped mid-stride, then peered into the wood, off the path in the direction Draco was gazing. Just at the edge of my sight, I could see the edges of a door that seemed somehow familiar. "Looks promising," Draco decided, and stepped off the path toward it. "Is that a good idea?" I winced. "I'm trying to find the way out," Draco retorted, "but by all means stay here and have tea with the snakes." I bit my lip and started forward, stopped, then raced after him into the dark forest. leaving the path behind.